Hi, welcome to part 2 of my Stormcast Eternal painting series. In today's video, I'll be painting the molten hammers for my liberators. My name is Mark, and this is the second video in my Stormcast painting series. If you haven't seen the episode 1 where I paint the armor, please check it out. But in this video, I'll be doing the fluorescent hammers. I paint them to look like they are incandescent hammers, imbued with some sort of magical ability that makes them glow. To do this, I got a bunch of different reference images of incandescent metal, either metal being forged, incandescent bulbs. There's a lot of really good reference out there. I mainly wanted them to look like a hammer that was being forged. Enjoy the video, and I'm going to show you my process. So these are two demonstration models that I had already painted. The axe and the hammer were painted both using the same techniques as today. Since I'll be using the airbrush, I start by masking the rest of the model. I use Silly Putty. This is a pretty efficient way to cover the model, and it can just be removed at the end with no real cleanup needed. These are the paints I'll be using with my airbrush. I have a white acrylic ink, a lemon yellow acrylic ink, and a fluorescent red. Since I'm only doing one model here, I start by adding about 3 drops of white ink to the airbrush. Then I begin spraying the white. It's important to do a bunch of thin coats as opposed to just one heavy coat. I feather the airbrush trigger to help with drying, ensuring that each layer is dried before the next one goes on. I'm aiming for a complete all-over coat on the hammers with the white ink. This is my favorite technique for cleaning the airbrush. I use my water pot and take an eyedropper and add water, sucking up the ink. I do this about 3 times, and then I clear everything with a little bit of alcohol. Then I load my yellow and do another all-over coat, covering the white completely. Once I'm done the yellow, I add the fluorescent red to the airbrush and spray it over the hammers. For this one, I'm not actually aiming for an all-over coat. I'm aiming for a feathered look with the yellow remaining in the center and radiating outwards. The thinking here is that the center will be the hottest point and therefore will be yellow, while the outsides will be cooler and we'll be building up darker tones there. As you can see, I'm working in really thin layers, working slowly to build up the transition from a yellow to an orange to the bright red. This paint's actually quite a bit brighter than the camera makes it look. I'll show some examples later that illustrate that point. I'm almost done wrapping up the airbrushing step, and you can see that the center is the hot spot and the outsides are getting cooler. Our future brushwork is going to emphasize that. Here I've switched up the exposure on the camera to really show how bright this paint is. This video is sponsored by Gallery Airbrushes. They provided me with this Mobius airbrush to use in some of my videos and give a review. When they sent it to me, they were not aware that this is actually the airbrush I've been using for the last 8 months. I bought one on Amazon, and I'm really happy with it and use it in almost every project. You can use the code in the video description to pick one of these up at no extra cost. We get a small commission
on every purchase made using the link, so we would really appreciate it. I use these airbrushes on every project from Space Marines. I do all the base coating, and I also use them on my Titan, and I highly recommend it for really any scale miniature project. So now that we've finished up the airbrush work, we're going to be switching over to the brush. I'm using Evil Sunz Scarlet, which normally is an extremely bright red, but in this case is actually quite a bit darker than the fluorescent red. I also have a dark scarlet and berserker red from two thin coats. With the Evil Sunz Scarlet, I'm going to be focusing on hitting all of the edges and then working up a transition from the center towards the outside where it becomes gradually darker and colder. Once I'm done the Evil Sunz Scarlet, I switch over to the Berserker Red and really want to hit those edges more. Normally I would do the Dark Scarlet second, but I accidentally grabbed the wrong bottle and did the entire coat before I noticed. I then glazed the Dark Scarlet over the hammer to strengthen the transitions, but I forgot to film that step. You can see with how bright the fluorescent colors are that this color looks almost black. After this step, I'll add black to show actual slag on the hammers. So far I have a pretty realistic incandescent hammer look, but there's a couple steps that can be done to make this look even more realistic and even hotter. I'm going to peel off the silly putty at this step since it's not really necessary and there's not really any risk of overspray. So now I want to accentuate some of the recesses where the metal would be hotter. So what I'm doing is I'm going in with a white ink and I'm just doing a manual panel lining. I'm also going to do the outline of the runes. So once the white is in, I can then cover it up with a fluorescent orange mix to make it look even hotter in the recesses. I'm now going in with thin layers of that fluorescent red I used, as well as the yellow, and this is going to really brighten up these spots and make them look extra hot. This step is pretty optional, but I'm really happy with how it turned out.
And there's my process for how I paint the hammers. I tried to keep a lot of the footage in. From start to finish, these hammers took me about 35 minutes to paint. If you're doing them in batches, it's not a lot longer. A lot of that time was spent cleaning out the airbrush in between steps or putting new paint on my palette. So if you're doing 10 of these at a time, you could easily do 10 of them in an hour and a half. But I'm gonna show some footage of close-ups of this hammer, as well as some of the other hammers from the army. But if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for upcoming videos. Part 3 is going to be the basing for this scheme. I haven't landed on a basing scheme yet. I'm thinking about doing snow bases, so I'm going to do a couple tests, and then I'm going to start working on that video next. So stay tuned for the glamour shots of these models.